Buckle up for this one because you're going to need to use a little bit of brain power, and I want you to try this before I show you how it's done. So we left off with our search page. Now we need to go back to our manage property page, and we need to actually assign functionality to the edit listing. Now again, before I show you how to do this, please go and try this on your own. See if you aren't able to come up with a solution. There's going to be multiple correct answers. So if you come to a different conclusion than I, but it still works correctly, congratulations. But do go and try this on your own and then come back and we'll go over it together. All right, so let's think about this. So we have our edit listing button. We want to change things that are in our database. Of course, working with no code, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel and redesign what we've already done. Let's take our add property design, copy that, and we'll paste one just like it, and we'll label this edit property. So we'll come up here, instead of add property, we'll just go to edit. And then we have our UI done. So if a user goes through this, it should update what property they currently have listed. But the catch here is, how do we know which property to update? Because when we're adding a new property, we're simply adding new information. We don't need to find out which certain property a user selected or based off a button click, which property we should change. It's creating something new. It doesn't need to reference anything. So how do we assign a reference point to which property should be updated? Well, there's probably, again, a bunch of ways to do this, but I'm going to assign a state variable value. So let's uncheck this pop-up so we can see our edit listing button. And I want to come to this first cell. And let's click on that repeating group. So right now it is finding all of the properties that we have currently added, but we want to assign a variable now, a way to associate each one of these with a property. So how do we do that? Let's think about it. Let's go to our state variable. We'll add a new state name. We'll call this property ID to edit. We're trying to find a way to associate the property with some sort of variable because we need to update the database based on a specific property ID, but we need a way to identify what that ID is. So for the state type, we're going to assign a property as the type, meaning we're looking for some sort of property. That property is going to represent our state variable. So we'll create, and we can leave it like that. There's no default value. So let's select this edit listing. We'll come to edit, and we want to add a workflow. What do we want to do on this workflow? Well, when that button is clicked, we want to assign that state variable a property ID. So let's do that. Let's find our elements. Let's set the state, and it's going to be your repeating group property type. So repeating group, your property. And then the custom state you'll find in there is property ID to edit. And the value is going to be the current cell's property. That way we establish or assign this property ID's state to that current cell's property, meaning whatever button edit they click or whatever edit button they click, that's going to be the property ID. We're going to assign that to that variable. And then we can select our show element. So for the element, we'll select our edit group element. So where is that? We'll come down to group focus, and you can see we have our edit property copy 3. So we'll select that, and that should display when we click edit listing. So we have that, but we still don't have a way to actually update the database. So let's do that. Let's go to our design, show that edit property group pop-up. Then let's scroll down. You can see we can't access our edit button. So let's come to our layout, and let's change our min height to 2100. So we can come down and see our submit property. Instead of submit, we'll go ahead and say edit property. So edit property. And we need to go and establish in our workflow the property ID, which we stored in our state variable. And that's how we're going to update that specific property when they input new information. So we'll go add a workflow. We'll add an action. And what do we want to do here? We want to update a thing or make change to a thing that already exists. Because we're editing, we're not adding. So we'll make changes to a thing. So we're going to select our repeating groups property, and then we can actually access that custom state or the property that was selected. And that is why it was so important we assign that state variable, so we have a way to access this information. Now you can see if we add all the fields, we can update everything just the same as we added, and it's going to only update the specific property associated with that edit listing button. I know that was a lot, and it was a lot for me to say and explain. So hopefully you kind of understand how we were able to access that data and then update this data associated with the correct property. Again, I know that's a lot. Maybe you have to rewatch that a few times, but hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. So we can go through and actually edit everything here. And the way we would do that is just go find those input fields, value, and associate them with each of these records in that table. So we could actually update anything and everything that was previously added to the property. Now, one thing to note here, of course, if you go in, since we copy and pasted everything, you're gonna get multiple of the same variable. So you'll have checkbox twice for the AC. You need to actually go back to your repeating group and relabel all of those values so you know which ones are the update ones, which ones are the add properties. Once you do that, then you'll be able to assign each of these records to the correct input value and then update your database accordingly. Then, of course, you probably want to have something happen after they click submit. So you can come down here and simply go to edit element actions. And then instead of show, we can actually hide that pop-up. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll select our focus group edit. So let's type in focus. Then you can select your edit. And let's just hide that element. You could also do, displaying our alert messages, stuff like that. Whatever you'd like to do, have fun with it, make it your own. So don't go anywhere. I'll see you in the next lesson.